Okay, thank you. I'm very excited to be here. I'm Ian Jarvis. I'm the program director with GeoGlam, and along with Gregory Giuliani, we'll be moderating this session. This session is a little bit different. It will be broken into two parts. The first part will provide an example of reproducible knowledge, and the second part will focus on the Geo Knowledge Hub. Now, a little different than yesterday, we'll be having short summary presentations by each of the presenters, followed by discussion for each part. I'll be moderating the first part, focusing on the Send2 Agri tools, and Greg will be focusing on the Knowledge Hub section. So with that, my screen is frozen. There we go. With that, I'll proceed. Okay, you saw this yesterday from Sarah's presentation. This is the way you can interact with the presenters. I want to give a couple introductory remarks. Of course, knowledge management is extremely important to all of our communities, but certainly for GeoGlam, it's been a priority for several years. Our initiative has been active for over a decade, and we've produced a lot of knowledge from peer-reviewed science to operational tools to training materials. This productivity is largely project-based, and our concern has always been that as we see projects come and go, as they go, we risk losing some of the intellectual property that's been developed. And unfortunately, the GeoGlam community, we have a fairly small management structure, and that's on purpose. But really, we don't have the resources to create our own knowledge management solution. So when GEO indicated they were interested in developing the Knowledge Hub, we wholeheartedly welcomed this proposal. And in the last year or so, we've actually been working with them to help develop a proof of concept. The first session presentations will highlight the value of this work and hopefully demonstrate to the broader GEO community the vast possibilities the Geo Knowledge Hub may offer for them. Now we're going to focus on one set of tools. It's a very mature example of reproducible knowledge used within our community called Send2 Agri. This was funded initially by ESA, and the work was conducted by a consortium led by UC Louvain. It provides knowledge from peer-reviewed papers to algorithms to open access code, training materials, and it's been done in a very systematic way. In fact, it's been well used. There's been over 10 webinars already, and over 2,000 downloads of the system have taken place. So without no further ado, let me introduce the speakers, starting with Sophie Bond. Sophie is with the Earth and Life Institute at UC Louvain. Since 2014, she has been a project manager for Send2 Agri. Sophie has long been a very significant contributor to GeoGlam and is in fact a member of our executive committee. She's also played key roles in the broader GEO community and is a co-chair of the CEOS Land Product Validation Subgroup. Second up will be Benjamin. Benjamin is a computer scientist, also with the Earth and Life Institute. Benjamin has been instrumental in bringing the Send2 Agri tools to life and making them available to the community. In recent months, he's been a really fantastic contributor, working with the Geo Knowledge Hub team to develop a cloud-based click-and-go solution, which he'll be talking about here. And finally, representing the user community, we'll hear from Nosy Seko. Nosy Seko is a remote sensing scientist with the South African Space Agency. She has applied the Send2 Agri tools within Africultures, which is an H2020 project, and has also benefited from one of the Geo Amazon Crowd Credit Awards that was initiated last year. She's also well known within the broader GEO community and is co-chair of the AfriGeo Land Degradation Neutrality Community of Practice. Okay, moving forward, we'll start with Sophie and ask her to unmute and present her short presentation.
So, hello everybody. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. And thank you, Yin, for the nice introduction. So I'm really pleased to be here today in this session about reproducible knowledge. So I think that today scientists are developing wonderful tools, knowledge, and we need also to take the time to think on how we will share this knowledge and how we will allow other players to use what we are developing. So I'm really happy to be part of this session, and I'm also happy that Send2Agree is used to demonstrate this possibility. So I have introduced you the Send2Agree system in my long presentation, and I will try to summarize what I said in this presentation in one slide and a few minutes. So what is Send2Agree? Send2Agree is an open source system that is able to ingest Sentinel-2 and Landsat-8 time series in near real time to generate EO products which are relevant for agricultural monitoring. So it is generated 4 kinds of products, which I will illustrate at the right of the slide. So the first product is a cloud-free surface reflectance composite at 10 or 20 meters, and these composites are produced every month. Then you have a dynamic cropland mask. So this is a map of your area of interest at 10-meter resolution, and for each pixel you get the information if it is cropland or not. So this cropland map is produced first at the middle of the season, and then it is updated every month until the end of your season. Then the third type of product is a crop type map. So also a map at 10-meter resolution, but here for each pixel you get the crop type. The crop type map is generated twice during the season, at the middle and at the end. And finally you get biophysical indicators, so LAI, FAPAR, FCover, which are produced for each Sentinel-2 or Landsat-8 acquisition. So Sentinel-2 is able to run at national scale, making wall-to-wall processing at 10-meter spatial resolution. So it means that in terms of monitoring, you can monitor a country at the parcel resolution. This is really important to handle both aspects. And so it opens a lot of possibilities. So you get the 4 products I have mentioned, and you can combine them. And so doing that, you can, for instance, monitor the growing conditions in a crop-specific manner by crossing the LAI and your crop type map. Using the crop mask and the crop type, you can compute early estimates of the cultivated area of your crop, main crop types area from the mid-season. And you can also use your LAI to estimate the crop yields, for instance. So these are big examples, and there are many more. I'm sure that you get them in mind. So Send2Agree is a system that can be run on the cloud, but also on a local server. It offers you a seamless processing, so it really starts from the beginning by reading or downloading the level 1 products, and it is handling the pre-processing and the processing of the product until their final format and a user interface. So it is running on a Linux platform, but you don't need to be a Linux geek to operate Send2Agree system, so you can do it through a very friendly graphical user interface. This is free, open source, under a GPL license. So Send2Agree has been developed during a project that lasted 3 years and a half, and now the project is over, but the system is still there with an active user community. Jan mentioned it at the beginning. We have more than 2,000 downloads. The first version of the system was released in 2017, version 1.0, and now we are at the version 2.0.2, just to show that the system is evolving based on the experience we are doing, the feedback we receive. We have a website, a forum, where we try to answer all the questions we had from the users. We are also investing in capacity building. We organize webinars every 2 months where we present what we are doing and where we are collecting the feedbacks. And we are also organizing trainings. So there was a big in-person training organized in September 2019 in Belgium, but more regularly we are also doing some online trainings. So Send2Agree is there, an open source tool. We have also the Sentinel time series provided by the Copernicus program, and now with we can easily access clouds. So with these three components, we need to realize that EO agriculture monitoring is feasible for any user, for any country. But we need to invest in an appropriate capacity building to allow these external players to use our tools and our data. My last point for this short presentation is, of course, the possible evolution of Sen2Agri. Sen2Agri is a wonderful tool, but this is certainly not an end. So we are working on its evolution in different projects which are mentioned here, Sen4Cap, Sen4Stats. And we are working on integrating Sentinel-1 also. This is important in regions where we have cloud high cloud cover during the growing season. We are also working on the switch between mapping the crop type, what is done in Sen2Agri, and monitoring the agricultural practices. So here we would like to know if a field is tilled or not, if we are doing intercropping, when we are harvesting the crops and so on. So we are at the level of the practices. And the last module that needs to be included in this kind of tool is, of course, about the crop yield. So this is coming. Some of them are already there in the Sen4Cap tool, which is already available, and other ones will come in the Sen4Stat, which will come a bit later. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sophie. So we'll move on to Benjamin now and talk about the click-and-go version of Sen2Agri.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the invitation. My short presentation here will be over the click-and-go version of Sen2Agri. So we worked with a Geo team to install it on AWS Cloud, a solution that allows you to run Sen2Agri without full installation. So you can go to the next slide, please. So the first question might be, why running Sen2Agri in the cloud? Because Sen2Agri can also run in a local data center or local server room. But why the cloud? Because Sen2Agri might need some big capacity of processing, RAM, and storage. So in the cloud, you can easily change the amount of resources allocated to your machine. If you just want to run a small test in a small zone, you can have less CPU and RAM than if you have to run Sen2Agri on a large area or a country level. Another advantage is that all the L1C images of Sentinel-2 are available in the bucket. So what's the bucket? It's a term used by Amazon, but basically it's a big storage that you can access. And there is a bucket containing all the L1C images. So you can just use the full archive of images, because if you work in a local infrastructure, you have to download all the data and on the Sci-Hub from ESA, and there is only 1 year of archive available online. And a third point will be the access to the images. So as I just mentioned, if you work in a local infrastructure, you have to download all the data, all the images. So it can take time, and that time depends on the connection, the network connection you have. But if you work in the cloud with the Amazon cloud here and the bucket, the link to the images is really fast, so it's instantaneously. So you can just access the images without downloading the images. Can you go to the next slide, please? And so what we did to simplify the installation on AWS is create an AMI, so it stands for Amazon Machine Image. So we first created an instance, and we install all the Cento-Agri system on the instance. And then from that instance, we created an image, an AMI. So the AMI does not contain any, let's say, personal data, so any credentials to access to the SciHub and that kind of information. No SSH key, and it's really a generic image. And from that image, we can run multiple instances. And for each instance, we can then allocate the resources we want and the storage capacity needed for the project. So basically, what we have to do is share the AMI with your AWS account if you want to use it. Then you just have to launch an instance with that based on that AMI, and then configure your credentials on the Cento-Agri web interface, and Cento-Agri is then is ready to use. So all the steps on the right, you can skip them. All the installation steps, mount the bucket, mount the disk, so you really save some time. And yeah, it's all from me.
Okay, thank you, Benjamin. That's very good. We'll move on to the user side and hear from Nosiseko.
Good day, everyone. In my presentation, I'll give a brief background of the H2020 Agriculture's project that we received the Amazon credits for, and also discuss the use of the Cento-Agri system in a cloud environment in support of the Agriculture's project. Next slide, please. Thank you. The Agriculture system is a geospatial decision support system that supports decision making in the field of food security and agriculture in Africa by improving crop and grassland monitoring and providing early warning products, and also reducing errors in yield estimation. The system is currently being developed by 17 partners from Africa and Europe, and it has been migrated to the Amazon cloud environment. Basically, there are two versions of the system. There's a full version, and there's also a community version. The community version is the one that has been migrated to the cloud environment. The difference between the versions, the full version has 7 services, which I'm going to describe later on, and the community version has 4 services. So basically, the 4 services that are provided in the community version are water service, which focuses on the provision of water quality and water quantity products, and crop service, which focuses on the crop monitoring and yield estimation products, and the livestock service, which focuses on the rangelands mapping and rangelands monitoring and assessment products. And lastly, the climate service, which focuses on the provision of the information on climate variability and long-term changes. So this project will also enhance technical skills of the African partners in cloud computing for rapid processing and dissemination of products. Next slide, please. The Cento-Agri system is used for product development for the agriculture services. Basically, the system was launched in the AWS cloud platform. And basically what we've done so far is to develop various products from Sentinel-2 for the Bothaville site in South Africa for the 2018-2019 summer growing season. So the products that we've managed to develop so far are level 2 products, which is the atmospherically corrected data, level 3 products, NDVI, LAI, fraction of vegetation cover, and now we are currently in the process of developing the level 4 products, which is a crop type. So these products, for instance, the leaf area index are used for crop growth monitoring. Leaf area index and FAP are used for crop growth monitoring, at a field scale throughout the growing season, as shown in the LI figure, whereby the changes are seen within 5 days. And also the leaf area index product is also used for biomass estimation for rangelands monitoring. From the level 2 data, the other biophysical parameters as well have been developed, like your leaf chlorophyll and also the canopy leaf water. These products are also used for crop conditioning to detect stress due to water or nutrient deficiency. The details of this are in the on the full presentation. In terms of the experience as a user, at the moment, yes, the system works very well, but we are still unable to view the products from the products window, and also are unable to download the products. So we have to download the products using the scripting and the Linux environment, which also poses some kind of challenge to individuals who are not familiar with scripting and Linux. Thank you. That's all for me. Thank you.
What was a 15-minute presentation and condensing it down to 1 or 2 slides, keeping us on time, leaving a good bit of time for questions. So in that respect, I'll close this off. Stop sharing my screen. Turn on my video so you can have the pleasure of seeing me. And start into the questions. And remember, please submit your questions on Slido. To start off, perhaps start with Benjamin. As I understand it, the Cento-Agri AMI is, of course, Amazon specific. The question is, can we run Cento-Agri and other cloud services? And you seem to indicate yes. And if so, what is the potential to develop click-and-go type approaches for other cloud services as well?
So yes, we run Cento-Agri here on AWS. So the name AMI, Amazon Machine Image, is really related to Amazon, but Cento-Agri has already been installed on other cloud. So it's not specific to Amazon. And I don't know all the available systems in other clouds to create such AMIs, but all clouds have systems like snapshots and that kind of things that allows you to create some kind of images. It's not, the name is not the same, but some kind of images with a basic install and then run multiple instances from that image.
Okay, thanks. Sophie, in your experience, who are the major users of the Cento-Agri system?
In fact, there are many types of users. Anyone which wants to produce some agricultural information on its area of interest is a potential user of Cento-Agri. So we have national users, Ministry of Agriculture, national statistical offices who can use Cento-Agri. International agencies, for instance, the World Food Programme is using Cento-Agri. It can also be used by researchers, so university lab, international research centers, private company, so no restriction.
Okay, kind of a supplemental to that. Jono was asked, have you seen national governments and institutions taking what you have created as a baseline and tailoring it to meet local needs?
Well, we have been working with ministries or with companies having the mandates to support the ministries. What I can say is that it takes time when you are working with official ministries to we need to take the time that they uptake the system and that they use it. But yes, this is in progress. And in the Send4Stat project that I mentioned in my short presentation, we are working with 5 national statistical offices or sub-entities of the Ministry of Agriculture to work exactly on that topic, so ingesting EO time series to support the statistics in agriculture.
Excellent. So Nosieko, as a kind of a general cloud question, as a user of Cento-Agri, what role do you see open access cloud services playing in your country and the rest of Africa?
Most of the African countries or institutions, they lack infrastructural capacity to store, process, or analyze big data, which is generated by the multiple low to high resolution satellite missions such as your Copernicus, Sentinels, etc. So the cloud environment allows African countries, institutions to rapidly access, manipulate or deploy processing chains or tools to derive EO-based informational products. It also enables the swift distribution of the products to various users on the ground.
Thank you. I think we'll go back to Sophie for this one. The Geo Knowledge Hub ambition is to be a central hub providing access to codified knowledge. In you and your users' perspective, I should say, what are the most important aspects that will make it successful in your view?
Can try to answer first, but maybe Nosieko can also contribute. So from what we hear from our users, I think that there are different kinds of supports that are needed. And the first is certainly direct support on the infrastructure. So we have the forum which is in place, but when we start with a user, usually we manage to get a direct interface with the platform where they install the system. And it is really important to invest on the first steps, because if a user is stopped at the first step, they will not go further. And so this is something which is very important. And in that line, any documentation, but not only PDF documents, but videos, tutorials can be really, really helpful on that. But yeah, I'm on the producer side, so.
Yep. Nosieko, do you have anything to add to that?
Basically, on the user side, the continuous support, like you said, like she says, the tutorials, the videos are quite important, so that the users have something to refer to when they get stuck, and also making sure that the user feedback is actually incorporated in terms of improving the system as we go along. As I mentioned earlier in my presentation, that as users, for instance, at the moment, we cannot click to download the products. We had to use the script via the Linux machine to actually access the buckets. It's one of the things that we need to make sure that as a developer or the producer, we keep the interaction and the communication with the user so that we get the actual feedback on the system.
Maybe I can just add something related to the click and download products. So if you download the last version of Cento-Agri that's available, you will not have any problem with downloading and downloading the products and view the product. But here, during the creation of the AMI, with one or two bugs that we had to correct with the Cento-Agri developers also, and so in the current version that is running for you, we still have to correct that bug.
But anyway, I think that the AMI is exactly this objective. Is to directly provide the machine to the users, which is ready to use, and so without you give them the possibility to avoid them all the installation and so on and so on. So this is contributing to this objective.
So this is really democratizing access to these what are fairly sophisticated, cutting-edge tools. I can really appreciate that. We have some other questions coming in. Do you have an analysis of the benefits of having shared the Cento-Agri system with various users? I guess that's looking for, I guess, a structured analysis of users, surveys, that sort of thing.
So not exactly on that way. During the webinars, we are regularly doing user survey, so to know what they are doing with Send2Agree and what they need in terms of support or in terms of development. These surveys take place once or twice a year, but we did not really take the time to structure it and in a kind of report. So this is more in an informal way, let's say.
Okay. Coming in, doesn't the first step mentioned by Sophie involve connectivity, infrastructure, and investment needs? Anybody want to comment on that?
Well, maybe the first step I was mentioning is really the installation. I think this is the thing that makes people afraid. So because people who are using Send2Agree are not necessarily a Linux expert. I'm not at all a Linux expert, but I'm using Send2Agree. And so I think this is important to decouple the installation and the operation of the system. This is one thing. And then in terms of connectivity and so on, that's clear that if you have to download all the data because you are running on a local server, you need to have the infrastructure to do so. This is why here we are offering a cloud solution, and in fact, usually Send2Agree is used on the cloud, even if it is technically possible to use it locally. Yeah.
Okay, so it's really lowering the bar to access I'd just say the GeoGlam philosophy around ITC or the technology side is a federated approach, really where we as a community can create tools such as Send2Agree and then provide access through as many infrastructure platforms as possible. So it wouldn't be limited that way. Plus, we know that the platforms are continuously evolving, so I see the work that you've described in Amazon as just being the start, and we'll move forward and from there with Send2Agree, but also other tools as they come along, like the Send4Cap and tools, for instance. Okay. Question, are you getting a lot of people contributing back to the open source code base? Is there a community, and what tools are you using?
It for me.
Yeah.
So, Benjamin,
I'm not developing Send2Agree, so I don't. I'm not really contributing directly to the code in Send2Agree. I'm more in testing part, so we tell everything that we have to correct to the developers. But maybe Sophie, you know more about the contribution really on the code from other people.
In fact, we did not get contribution in terms of new modules that could be added or plugged to Send2Agree. That we did not get. What we get is users that are modifying the existing processors, modifying them to working on the interface between the Send2Agree system and their system, probably like Gnosis Echo has explained, to include Send2Agree in a much larger monitoring system, but also to deviate a little bit the finality. For instance, we are doing crop type mapping. We know that it has been used for general land cover mapping, for grassland also, and so it requires some adaptation, but here this is more adaptation than really doing new development that can be coupled with the system.
Okay, I have one for Gnosis Echo. How much technical capacity do you need to run the Send2Agree? And the question just disappeared. Okay. How much technical capacity do you need to run the Send2Agree tools, and what would you suggest this to a new user to run the Send2Agree system?
Okay, in terms of what we've, in terms of the technical capital, what we've allocated for our usage, which we actually encountered some issues in terms of the disk being full and stuff like that. In terms of the sizes of the disk and stuff like that, we're looking at anything between 500 gigs to 2 terabytes for you to to be able to run a full production from level 2 to level 4. However, we are still in the process of doing that, of running that, but at the moment, that is what is working for us. Then, can you please repeat the last phase, the last part of the question, Ian? Sorry.
It is gone. Yeah, I don't have control over the questions that appear on my screen, unfortunately. If possible, can we bring that last question back? Okay, how much technical capacity do you need to run it, and would you suggest, and what would you suggest to a new user to run the Send2Agri system?
Okay, like I said, enough disk space in terms of it being like allocated if it's running in the cloud environment. So obviously that also talks to the credits as well that you have in the cloud environment. Talks to a lot of things. Obviously, if it's being run in the local machine, I would assume that the similar specifications would be required. So as a user, basically, what I would recommend is just to have, like I said, enough space or credits, and also to use the system to the fullest, because it's got a lot of there's a lot of information that can be derived from the products. And also, when we are one thing that we've also noticed when we, for instance, when we are doing the level 4 product processing, is that we need to check our in-situ data, how it's been captured, and also how the points have then been produced. So that is also critical on how, when you are doing the crop type management, because the system can just crash because of that. So those are the things that we've learned so far. That is your in-situ data is very important. You check your disk space in terms of what you want to do and the processes that you want to run. And also, it also depends on the area of interest that you are working on. For instance, if you are looking at the products that are from the Sentinel-2, which is actually bigger in size than Lancet 8, so obviously you need a bigger disk space and stuff like that. Thank you.
That's good. So I'd like to window down on a bit with respect to in situ data. Not in South Africa perhaps, but I know a number of countries have very big concerns about data confidentiality and security. Things like in situ data and so on. Do you see this as a major barrier to using cloud services, trusting the security and so on?
Yes and no. Yes, because it also depends on the project, on how one, or let me say, on how one has acquired that in situ data. Because obviously there are regulations, there are restrictions that come with that, as you just mentioned. There might be difficulties in terms of sharing the institute data based on that, because some of the data sets might not be shared openly. For instance, I know that in our case, I think it's the yield estimation data that is available, I think, every 2 or 3 years or something like that. So, for instance, if you're looking for a data set that is for now, for 2020, you might not get it because there are restrictions so that you are not allowed, you will not be able to access that. So, in terms of that, in terms of those restrictions, so it's a bit tricky, I must say. It's a bit tricky. So it might affect the product development in the Send2Agri environment. especially in the cloud environment.
Sophie, I know in the Sen4Stats project, you're working with a number of statistical agencies in a number of countries. Do you have anything to add from your experience so far?
We have this request in Sen4Stat to develop the protocol that will allow ingesting in situ data without not getting a direct access us, the producers. So it means that it is what we call a machine-to-machine protocol. This is only the machine where the system is running that will access the data, use it for the processing, and then there is no data on the cloud. And me, as a person with operating the system, I do not have access to the cloud. So this is something that is requested by official or national ministries because exactly of the issues that you mentioned. So this is, I think, this is being developed in Sen4Stat. We have been also working in another project with FAO in Senegal and Uganda, where we have the same kind of requests, and also working on the Amazon cloud, and where we are also pushing this kind of solution. So I think that this is something that we are aware, and we know that this is a priority to be sure that these tools can be used by ministries. Yeah.
Great. That's a good discussion on in situ. I think we're running short of time. We have other questions, but perhaps we'll see if we can take those offline and answer them in another way. I'd like to thank all our speakers. I think you did a great job. As I said, condensing a 15-minute presentation into a few minutes and a slide or two is quite a feat, and I thought you did a very good job. I'll also mention again, all the long-form presentations are available on the from the GEO website, and if you haven't already, I would suggest you might want to check out the more detailed presentations, find out more about this. So with that, thanks again, and I'll turn it over to Greg for the second part of session 3.
Thank you, Jan, and thank you to the three speakers for this great example. So the second part of the session will try to discuss how GEOS should evolve to capture the knowledge, like the example we had before with Sen2Agri, but because if we can imagine that in every group, every community that is contributing to GEO and GEOS, there are a lot of knowledge that we need to capture, and now we really need to evolve. We concentrated in GEOS in getting the data in the past years. Now we really need to make an impact and to share that knowledge and to reach the decision makers with the proper knowledge, so that we can support them in getting the right information on the environment, so that they can take a good decision. So for that, we'll have two presentations in that part of the session. So the first one will be from Douglas Cripe from the GEO Secretariat. So Douglas is a senior scientist at GEO. He's a climatologist by background. So he's a former also colleague of mine at the University of Geneva. So I'm pleased to leave the floor to Douglas to give us some insight on the Geo Knowledge Hub.
Okay, thank you, Gregory. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here and to discuss with you briefly the Geo Knowledge Hub. As has been pointed out, all of these are condensed presentations of the recordings that we made, which you can refer to if you're looking for more details. If we could click, there are several parts to this, so just kind of click through it, and there we go. So as we've just seen, Sen2Agri is a tool that has been developed in conjunction with GeoGlam, and it looks at mapping different crop types. And this is an example that was used in our plenary when we demonstrated how the Knowledge Hub could work. And we used it because it's a very good illustration of the kinds of knowledge that are being developed across the GEO work program that would benefit from having a central library, digital library, if you will, where that kind of knowledge could be accessed and applied. So we've been thinking at the Secretariat how best we could do this, and the Geo Knowledge Hub aims to fill this need for discovering, accessing, reproducing, and scaling up knowledge that's developed across the work program. Next slide, please. When we think of knowledge, what we are thinking in terms of is actually the resources that go into an end-to-end application of Earth observations, starting with basic research, publications on methodologies to approach a problem, and then along with that is kind of the more logistical aspects of implementing that methodology in terms of codes, modeling, software, algorithm development, and so forth. And then, of course, you need the basic ingredients on which the application is operating. So that could involve remotely sensed data, in situ data, or both, some kind of combination. And then another important element are results and output products that have been produced using this particular methodology, and then the materials on how to actually use that information. So all of these components within the wheel are what we are terming knowledge resources, and then a knowledge package is the blue circle that encompasses all of these components. And it's the knowledge package in particular that we're focusing on featuring in the Knowledge Hub. Next slide, please. Right, you can see the definition of how we are referring to open knowledge in that previous slide. So how do we propose to go about this? As I've mentioned, as you've seen in this example, the work program, this example of Sentu-Agri, I should say, the work program of GEO is the primary source of information that's being developed across the GEO community. And so this is where we would like to work closely with the leadership of the work program to identify those areas, those applications of Earth observations that are mature enough to be included in the Knowledge Hub. And you can see here, this is kind of a difficult image to see. I'm not sure if the resolution is good enough, but in any case, you can see that there's kind of on the left hand here, we're looking at identifying the knowledge resources. We're looking at curating and mediating that, putting it into the Knowledge Hub, and then having a feedback loop with end users to ascertain how appropriate, how relevant the particular application is for their purposes. So again, in phase one of the development of the Knowledge Hub, we're looking to work with leadership of the knowledge of the GEO work program to populate the Knowledge Hub. And then also, as we've referred to and has been mentioned in some of the presentations on Sentu-Agri, training is very important. And so we are looking at ways in which we can disseminate information that's contained in the Knowledge Hub and train the trainers through a series of means. Webinars could be one aspect of that, and there are many others. Next slide, please. So to sum up here, we are looking at amplifying, if you will, activities of the work program, in particular the solutions that have been developed and which apply Earth observations. And we would like to do this in an open science context where every aspect of the application is open for access, for scrutiny, and for adaptation for individual or national or regional purposes. We're looking at helping activities of the work program scale up what it is that they are doing. And again, Send2Agri, I think, has been a very good example of this. So it's a two-way street. We want to be sure that the work program is supported by the Knowledge Hub, and the Knowledge Hub serves as a kind of a sounding board to amplify what's being done there. Again, everything about the Knowledge Hub is open source, including the infrastructure for organizing research. It's going to be built on something called Invenio RDM, which is Research Data Management. It is a package that's being developed by CERN in Geneva, and many other actors who are involved in helping develop Invenio RDM. It's a very stable platform, and the GEO Secretariat has actually been involved in teleconferences with CERN and its partners in helping to develop this. I guess the final word here is once again, we see this as definitely as a two-way street. We are going to, we being the Secretariat, are going to work with the work program activities to help them scale up what it is that they're doing and help others around the world be aware of what they're doing and actually be able to apply the applications in a zero download model where cloud computing can lower the bar, as Ian said, for countries, especially developing countries, to apply these Earth observation activities. So I think that's my last slide. Thank you very much. Back to you, Gregory.
Thank you, Douglas, for this nice presentation on the Geo Knowledge Hub. And then now we will switch to the second presentation made by Ivan Deloge from FGDC in the US and Stefano Nativi from the JRC on evolving geos to support reproducible knowledge. So Ivan Deloge is the executive director of GEFGDC. So he's an active member of Geo and GEOS, and Stefano Nativi is the big data lead scientist at GRC of the European Commission, and he's also deeply involved in Geo since a lot of years. So Stefano and Ivan, I leave you now the floor.
Okay. This is Stefano Nativi. I don't know if Ivan is still here, but anyway, I mean, I can start, and then, of course, Ivan, you are free to jump in whenever you like. So, as you can appreciate watching our video, we have started this year a new foundational task, which is called GEO's Implementation Development task, and this is going to cover a set of different components in order to address what are the new needs and the challenges raised by GEO as of its Geo Strategic Plan 2016-2025. And in particular, here we want to, as Gregory also mentioned, we want to move from a data-centric approach to a more knowledge-driven approach in order to serve further and serve more different users, not only scientists, but in particular decision makers and in some cases citizens, of course. And then another important challenge is to provide support in order to understand what is going on in terms of global change, so to run simulation and to provide a forecast as far as possible. And finally, as I said, we have to move into knowledge generation by leveraging the ultimate technologies developed by the digital revolution And in particular, of course, here I'm talking about big data, but in particular machine learning, artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, and digital twins. So these are the big challenges for the next years of GEO, and this task has been promoted in order to, start discussing how to support GEO and how to develop a new and advanced GEOs addressing all these challenges. I guess that you can go to the next slide. Thank you very much. I think okay. So clearly, in doing that, one of the component is the support to the Geo Knowledge Hub, and the Geo Knowledge Hub is one of the components. And in particular, the GIDTT is asked to provide the connection of the Geo Knowledge Hub to the community. So in terms of knowledge body provided by the GEO members, and in terms of users, so user needs. And this is done through the GEOS platform in the general sense. The GEOS platform is going to be advanced into a real ecosystem, so not just one component, but an ecosystem of different components. And indeed, the Geo Knowledge Hub is going to be a key component here. But they also must be connected in order to establish synergies and in order, to make them more effective and viable. And this is another important support coming from this task in terms of devising a new architecture, high level, of course, architecture for the next GEOS ecosystem. And finally, also we have been discussing what is the role of regional GEO, because regional GEO initiatives are particularly important in order to fill the gap between the global and the national, regional and local level, and to address users, but also to leverage the knowledge bodies created at this level. So what is the role, how they can be, instrumental here in order to connect the different components of the ecosystem. Okay, can you go to the next slide? And this is pretty much what we wanted to say. We have covered at least these three main strengths in our presentation, in our long video. So if you wanted to understand more, please watch the video. And of course, I am and Ivan, we are all available for your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Stefano, and thank you for reminding that all the videos are online on the GEO website. So it's also an important resource for the community. So I will suggest that Stefano and Douglas, you switch on also your camera, and then you will now move to the discussion part. So we receive already a couple of questions about the GEO Knowledge Hub and how we will evolve. So maybe the first question, it would be probably for you, Douglas. So what would that be possible to retrieve data from the GEOS platform to execute a model or a code discovered into the Geo Knowledge Hub? What will be, in other words, what would be the connection between the Knowledge Hub and the existing GEOS platform?
Okay, that's a good question. And I think that to the extent that the data that is included in a particular Earth observation application, to the extent that that data might be accessed through the platform, well, that's one way that it could happen. The Knowledge Hub is not, like GEOS, is not going to be a repository of data. It is going to, however, provide the digital object identifiers to pinpoint the data that's been used in the application, and whether that resides through the GEOS platform or in some other fashion. We want to just ensure that the knowledge the data can be accessed in that fashion.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think it's going to be still for you, Douglas. Do you plan to use various languages into the Geo Knowledge Hub?
Well, that's a good question. Again, we're not talking about languages, programming languages. I'm assuming we're talking about the issue is that Geo, when it started back in 2005, because it's got a very small secretariat, it was determined that the working language would be English. So that's kind of the principle that we have been operating on thus far. Now, that's not to say, this is Geo and we accept everything that we're given as well, to the extent that we can deal with it and manage it. So I wouldn't rule out that we might have knowledge packages that are in other spoken languages, but we are not like the UN. Many of you are fully aware that the United Nations operates in 6 languages, but they've got an army of translators and interpreters to do that, and we simply don't have that in the Geo Secretariat. So I guess my answer at this point would be that nothing is ruled out, but in principle it would be English to start with, for sure.
Okay, thank you. Now I see that Ivan is online. So I turn a question to you, Ivan. So there are other indicatives to manage knowledge, such apparently Copernicus is preparing one. So when we will be able to talk about a knowledge system of systems?
Excellent question, and it really goes back to one of the fundamental principles of GEOS, this architecture, that these components need to be interoperable. So that's, of course, is going to be driven by a series of standards, and I think the community has agreed to abide by those standards. So I think we need to do some testing in that regard. I think our colleagues in the EU and the EC are committed to doing that. That's something I would like to see as well, how we bring these various components together and also simplify it. One of the key drivers for GEOS is to make it user-friendly. And there are a lot of complexities, we all know, with a system of systems, but as engineers and architects, we need to be able to simplify the process so we can bring all these various resources together.
Thank you. Maybe to you, Stefano, now. Will usability studies be conducted to ensure that the different Geo Knowledge Hub interfaces, so like the graphical user interface or the APIs, will conform to user needs and expectations?
Well, this is a quite precise and useful, important question. Well, I mean, so far, what we have discussed in task with the people, with the members, of this task, it is to start a sort of stepwise process. So we will start, considering stakeholders who are, the main, of course, stakeholders here, which are the main use cases, the user scenario, and then, to devise a, high-level system architecture. So indeed, I mean, afterwards, we will also to think about, usability, flexibility, scalability, and all the implementation, features that must be considered by design, of course. But, we we have just started, and we have drafted a sort of high-level conceptual cyber architecture. So, I mean, you can go and watch the movie where we present this high-level concept. But certainly, I mean, this is one of the things that we would like also to include in this stepwise process.
Okay, thank you, Stefano. So maybe also for you, Ivan. So before we had a really nice example on the Send2Agree project and how they connect and how they capture the knowledge. So obviously it's really important for the users. But how do we plan into GEO to expand the Geo Knowledge Hub through the entire, let's say, work program, or at least to try to maximize and to reach as much as possible the users within the Geo work program?
Well, that's the conversation that we're having now as part of our plans for GEOS Evolve, to explore what those possibilities are. We recognize that the hub is going to be a useful component of the entire system, but I think some additional testing, as we like to say, start small before we expand too far. But I think we need to do some sample testing to see how that would work. The software that's being utilized is relatively new to many of us. On the GIT-TT, the GEOS Implementation Development Task Team. So the task team has the charge of understanding how we, in fact, leverage what the Knowledge Hub has to offer, be able to support those users.
Thank you. So just a remind also the audience that you can ask your question on Slido using the Geo code, and do not hesitate to ask your question directly into Slido. So the next questions. Let me just check. Well, maybe for you, Douglas, are you planning to create a community blog in the Geo Knowledge Hub to strengthen the community working on specific solutions? So I imagine a mean to connect with the community.
Yeah, I think that's we're open to all ideas. We're discussing many things, but we definitely want to have the community be involved to the greatest extent possible, both in the planning and execution or the implementation of the Knowledge Hub, and then in getting feedback from them. So whatever format proves to be the most efficient to do that, but we're open to suggestions. A blog might be the way to do that, or a forum where we have scheduled encounters and things like that. So yes, I guess the short answer is of course.
Great. So maybe now a more, let's say, technical question. Is there a link between the Geo Knowledge Hub and the work being done in remote sensing domain ontology? So basically using the ontology on knowledge applied to image processing. So I don't know, maybe Stefano, if you can answer this question.
Well, I mean, I'm not very well, into the Knowledge Hub ongoing activities. So maybe Doug, you can cover it better than me.
Yeah, this is kind of at the limit of my technical knowledge about how this will operate as well. But I think maybe the way to approach or to think about this is that we start with the application that's developed, and however that's done, we're agnostic about that. All we're interested in is that every piece of the information chain is available and understandable in open science context, and then we offer that. We combine it, put it together in the knowledge package. And then make it available, searchable and available through the Knowledge Hub. So, whatever technical, aspect that goes into the preparation of that particular application, that's germane for whoever is developing it. We're just interested in making that application available.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Let me check the questions. Yeah, so maybe this is a question for the three of you, Stefano, Douglas, and Ivan. Is once we will be able to reproduce the knowledge, so once, let's say that the Geo Knowledge Hub will be really operationalized, how do you see the connection between the Knowledge Hub and the decision makers? So how can we support the various decision makers in different countries around the world with the Knowledge Hub to support them and to give them proper information?
Well, I mean, I can start, but I'm sure that this is, as you said, there are possible different views here. So I just started with mine, and I'm sure that Ivan and Doug will have some, thoughtful, different views. And of course, in my view, I mean, they are not either or, but they should, all be a complementary, viewpoints. So, in my view, this is exactly what we should, cover when I said that we have to come up with a set of user scenarios addressing the right stakeholders, because clearly, we know very well that there is the need for knowledge. This is for sure, so not just data, but we have to move on, towards insights, information, and even better, knowledge. So this is for sure. The real question is how to provide them, and this is covered well by asking your stakeholders, can you provide me some stories so that I can, learn from these stories, and I can extract functionalities, behavior of the system, so that I can, implement this functionality and this behavior. So, as I said, this is what the task force, what the task team is planning to do. We are working, or we are going to, work soon on a document trying to cover this kind of, stories or use cases, and then, in my view, we will have to devise these modalities on such stories.
Thank you, Stefano.
And I would just add that this is going to require dialogue between decision makers, users, and the providers. And I think the key is going to be understanding what those needs and requirements are, and then developing the appropriate tools, simplified tools that they can actually utilize the complex data sets and information that we know will be available through the hub. So I see this more as an iterative process, and as Stefano has said, it's one of the tasks that the task team has in front of them, is to develop sort of a guideline on how to do that. So looking forward to working with our users in the Geo community.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. And maybe I'll just add one other kind of perspective. When we were thinking about, in the Secretariat, we're thinking about this concept of, a results-oriented GEOS. What does that look like? And in particular, how does the Knowledge Hub fit into this? We were kind of taking the view of the priorities for GEO, the SDGs, Paris Agreement, and Sendai Framework, and how can we help our member governments fulfill their commitments under these agreements. And so we were initially taking the perspective of, say you're a government individual who's responsible for the reporting of that government under one of the SDGs. Take land degradation neutrality, for example, and you're not quite sure how to do that. Well, we were trying to think in terms of how could we target the information available in the Knowledge Hub to that kind of an individual, someone who is somewhat savvy technology-wise, and is also involved in the government. So it's true that the Knowledge Hub may kind of target an intermediate technical level, But at the same time, that's kind of where we started from, is that we wanted to, think in terms of supporting governments with respect to the priorities. But, that being said, we would then try to work with identifying, those types of individuals, and then help them either scale it down to other end users who might find the information available, useful, or else maybe go the other direction as well. So I hope there's an answer in that rambling.
Okay, thank you. There are a couple of questions that are popping up about also the use and how to incorporate into the Geo Knowledge Hub all these emerging, I would say, new data sources, especially from crowdsourcing, citizen science, and so on. So what are maybe your view, Douglas, because you are the most involved directly into the Geo Knowledge Hub? How do you foresee the implementation or the use of crowdsourced data and citizen science data, generated data, into the Knowledge Hub? Because that's going to be especially important also for as a kind of reference data sets for training and validating models that you can discover through the Knowledge Hub.
Okay, so good question. Again, if you think of in terms of the knowledge package and all the different resources that are involved in that, to the extent that citizen science is a component in that knowledge package, then for sure that would be referenced, and that would be made available to anyone who wants to reproduce or replicate that particular application. I have personally been involved in a citizen science project many years ago, and I really citizen science is something I think is very important and can bridge a lot of gaps in terms of in situ observations. So again, the short answer is absolutely. If it is if it's documented and it forms a part of the knowledge package, then it would certainly be a part of that which is knowledge that's considered by the Knowledge Hub.
Okay, thank you. So there are also a couple of questions about the Knowledge Hub and the launch of the Knowledge Hub. So what are the current major risks for launching the Knowledge Hub? So in terms of budget, schedule, programmatic, and others issue. I don't know who wants to react on this. Maybe Ivan, I don't know if you...
Well, I would just, at a high level, it's one of the recommendations that we had submitted as part of our evaluation of the Knowledge Hub implementation plan. I think we still need to identify those resources and the planning for that. And I think, in all fairness, we're learning as we go along, which is expected with a new entity like this. But we don't have all the answers there, but I think there are some things we need to consider in terms of the resource requirements. So it's one of the reasons why we are suggesting or recommending a 1-year implementation plan, so we can, in fact, get some better answers to some of those key questions as we move along.
Okay. Thank you. Also related to the work program activity, are you planning to have a focal point for each work program activity that can work with the Geo Knowledge Hub? Is that meaningful? Is that make sense?
Well, I'll answer that one. We are looking to identify within, probably, certainly within the flagships and most of the initiatives, those that are the most mature and are producing, services, products, what have you, like Sento-Agri. We look to identify a focal point within each of those who can serve as the liaison with those of us wanting to put that knowledge into the Knowledge Hub. So that's kind of a quick response. And just if I could, to go back to the previous question, just wanted to emphasize that in the Secretariat we have the resources that we need to implement this Knowledge Hub, certainly for the next year. So we've been working on that. We've identified, a number of people who a certain percentage of their time can be devoted to that. So we have the resources that we need to do that for the next year at least.
Okay, excellent. That's a good news. So also maybe another question for you, Douglas, about the quality check. So what what would be the procedure for checking the quality of the different elements into a package before being somehow validated and incorporated into the Geo Knowledge Hub?
Okay, so there again, we take the perspective that if this is an application that's developed in the work program, that there are experts who are working on this. Again, we take Send2Agri as an example, that are doing the quality checking as they go along. Now, of course, we're going to be monitoring, and we've used the word mediating to make sure that the information, the knowledge that's in the Knowledge Hub is robust, it's authoritative, it's trustworthy, and all of these things. But we also have to rely to a certain extent on those who are developing the solutions themselves. And then, of course, since it's open science, others can take a look at what they've done, and if there are, errors of methodology or what have you, then that in theory at least could come to light fairly quickly.
Yeah, that's important. Maybe a question for Stefano. In the next year, the Geo Knowledge Hub team and the Geos platform team, are they going to work together to move as a kind of in the UN system? We are acting as UN as one, and let's say that to move on the Geo as one as well, to work really together closely, so that we would bring the best out of the community and the both team.
Yeah, no, sure. I mean, let me say that I wouldn't just limit these to the two components, the present Geo platform and the future coming Geo Knowledge Hub. I would say that this is applicable for all the components of the Geos ecosystem. So I guess that this is, a sort of mandatory, development. And but in order to do that, I personally, realize that we need this high level, conceptual scheme where you can put, all those components and also the next coming ones, in order to devise how to connect, so that people, teams, may devise, may work together, how to link things. Okay, and this is not yet there. As I said, we have started. You can see the movie, and you can see that we have, started from a couple or maybe, 3 different possibilities, because clearly we counted all the possible software engineering solutions. We now decided to focus on a couple, and maybe the best solution is just to stay in the middle of these two couples. And so as soon as we have a more mature architecture, we can start defining how these component existing and future components, they must work together, and so that we can then ask people, developers, volunteers, to work together on the basis of this blueprint.
That makes absolutely sense, and that will be, I think, a great achievement. Maybe one of the last question, because we are reaching close slowly the end of the session. But on a technical aspect, who might take the raw materials, so all the element of a potential package that came into the Knowledge Hub, and help apply them. So what will be the support from the Geo Knowledge Hub team to help people packaging their knowledge, so with the DOI and all the, I would say, the best practices probably and who will benefit from that? So the knowledge, the Geo itself, the Geo community, or maybe they were also asking about some private companies or other people. So what would be the support basically to go into the Knowledge Hub?
So if that question is directed at me, we have a couple of, myself and Paula De Salvo are going to be principally the ones working with the activities of the work program to help them identify what might be suitable for a knowledge package to be delivered. In terms of support, I think we're looking to have a combination of items to try to help with or ask our work package leadership to help with that. We also have very good relations with ITC in the Netherlands and their capacity development with their alumni networks of people who come to use geospatial analytic software and so forth. So that there are a number of options, and I think we mentioned webinars also. That might be another avenue that we pursue. So there's probably going to be a combination of things.
Okay, thank you, Douglas. So maybe the last question, it's going to be still for you, Douglas. It's what is the schedule of the Knowledge Hub? Let me find again the question. What is the schedule of the Knowledge Hub, and what is the number of knowledge packages for the hub to be minimally viable? So are you expecting a small number of?
Well, let's see. When we were drafting the implementation plan, we thought about some performance indicators. What would be a satisfactory result after the first year, after the second year, and so forth of implementation. And in the end, we decided that perhaps numbers may not be the greatest indicator of how successful the implementation is. On the other hand, what will be, or maybe moreover, what would be more important is the uptake of the information in the Knowledge Hub, as reflected in government, in governments around the world, through, especially within GEO. And in reference to the previous question, the Knowledge Hub is open to anyone, not just GEO members or what have you, but anyone who wants to use it is welcome to. I think, if we're looking for numbers, I think we're going to be happy if we get, anywhere from 4 to 6 packages lined up in this expanded prototype, as Stefano mentioned, for the first year of implementation. And then we'll reevaluate as we go into longer term. So I think we would be very happy if we got, say, anywhere from 4 to 6 full knowledge packages available.
Okay, that's excellent, and that's putting some challenge to the community now. So now we are at the end of the session, so I really would like to thank you, Ivan, Stefano, Douglas, and all the speakers from the Send2Agree presentation. Also to Jan. I don't know if Jan, you want to add something also as a kind of closing remark, but I think that the Geo Knowledge Hub is really, really exciting, and I'm really looking forward to work with you, all of you, and to move towards this great objective on the Geo Knowledge Hub. So thanks to all. Jan, I don't know if you want to add something.
Well, just on top of what you're saying, coming from one of those communities that we've been talking about, I think we're very excited about this, and having working close with the team over the last year, I can see the potential. As soon as the other communities understand the potential that's there and what a resource it's going to be, I think it's going to be a really important service to the broad GEO community.
Okay, so thanks to all again, and good continuation for, and please attend the other session of the GEO Symposium over the day and over the week. because it's going to be really, really interesting. So thanks to all, and take care.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Gregory.
There's our
Bye. Bye.